There's currently an active lawsuit with the rapper RBX going against Spotify. RBX is an artist, a West Coast artist that is actually Snoop Dogg's cousin. He has songs with Snoop Dogg, he has songs with Eminem, he has songs with multiple artists, a lot of songs under his belt, and he is going against Spotify. But it's the way he's suing Spotify and how he's trying to get his point across by naming other artists. In this case, he decided to name Drake. The lawsuit against Spotify claims billions of Drake streams were fraudulent. A new class action lawsuit accuses the streaming platform of turning a blind eye to mass scale fraudulent streaming. In the introduction to this lawsuit, it says to make it in the music business, you need a unique mix of extraordinary talent, determination, skill, and luck. And once you get on top, it's even harder to stay there. Some say the music business is a hustle because it's a dog eat dog environment, and you need to think of ways to break new ground every day. The famous American journalist and author Hunter S. Thompson once said, the music business is a cruel and shallow money trench. There's also a negative side. When it comes to recorded music, every month, more than 100,000 artists, songwriters, and producers are forced to compete for their share of a limited pool of royalty payments from Spotify. Success begets success, and a higher stream share means not only more money, but also placement on top 10 playlists that further increase stream share and other promotional attention. In the face of this competition, some take the hustle too far. They resort to cheating. Every month, under Spotify's watchful eye, billions of fraudulent streams are generated from fake, illegitimate, or illegal methods. An example, bots. So here comes the conversation with bots again. And I think that they're pointing out Drake because he was talking about bots in his lawsuit. So who else to bring up as an example than the person who brought them up in the first place? I think Drake opened this door upon himself. As described here in data analysis, shows the billions of fraudulent streams have been generated with respect to songs of the most streamed artists of all time, Aubrey Drake Graham, professionally known as Drake. But while the streaming fraud with respect to Drake's songs may be one example, it does not stand alone. This mass scale of fraudulent streaming causes massive financial harm to legitimate artists, songwriters, producers, and other right holders, whose proportional share is decreased as a result of fraudulent stream inflation on Spotify's platform. So RBX is taking Spotify to court because he dislikes the fact that they are not pointing out that other artists are cheating the system, allegedly. And they're trying to find ways like use bots to get more share of the pie, a bigger piece of the pie. Let me go ahead and get a bigger cut so that way I could get more money off of Spotify than artists that are trying to earn it fairly. Reading the document a little bit further, it says for streaming services that generate revenue depending on the number of songs downloaded or streamed, the potential revenue is limitless. The more songs streamed, the more revenue generated. Alternatively, some of the streaming services such as Spotify generate revenue pools from, among other things, the subscription fees paid by monthly subscribers as well as advertising revenue. Rights holders are paid a percentage of the revenue pools based on the formulation that correlates the percentage of total streams attributable to individual right holders against the total volume of streams for all songs. Anytime a rights holder's share of revenue pool increases due to increased music streams, the share for right holders necessarily decreases. Indeed, as Drake once explained in a legal filing, streaming and licensing is a zero-sum game. Thus, if some form of streaming fraud results in an artificial increase of certain right holders' shares of the revenue pool, it necessarily comes at the expense of the right holders whose songs were legitimately streamed by real consumers and whose share of revenue pool necessarily decreases. And I think another reason why RBX wants to use Drake's name is because he knows that this is somebody who's probably been getting away with it, who Spotify's been allowing it to happen with. And again, everybody was talking about when Drake was suing over bots, it was only because he was familiar with bots himself. It was more of this, it takes one to know one type of situation that people were talking about when he was accusing Kendrick Lamar. However, it says here that under a properly functioning system, when Spotify knows or should know that music streams for a particular song have been artificially and fraudulently inflated through the use of bots or otherwise, Spotify cannot credit those fraudulent streams to the revenue share owed to the right holders for those songs. However, it continues by saying music streams of Drake's music is artificially boosted by bots. Drake is a well-known singer-songwriter whose music is available for streaming on Spotify. In fact, Drake is purportedly the most streamed artist of all time on the platform in September 2025. However, on information and belief, there is a voluminous information of which Spotify knows or should know, showing that between January 2022 and September 2025, a substantial non-trivial percentage of Drake's 37 billion streams on Spotify during that time frame were inauthentic and appeared to be in the work of a sprawling network of bot accounts. Plaintiff is informed and believed that the examination of Drake's music streams reveal abnormal VPN usage, seemingly designed to obscure the true geographic origins of the bot accounts that were streaming his songs. They're alleging that there are bot farming locations that they are using VPN so that way they can't track where they are using the songs, streaming the songs nonstop repeatedly, so that way they could boost up the streams. Further, plaintiff is informed and believes that the large percentage of the accounts streaming Drake's music were geographically concentrated around areas whose population could not support the volume of streams emanating therefrom. In some cases, massive amount of music streams, more than 100 million streams, originated in areas with zero residential addresses. Moreover, plaintiff is informed and believes that the geohash data shows that nearly 10% of Drake's streams come from users whose location data showed that they traveled a minimum of 15,000 kilometers in a month, moved unreasonable location between songs, consecutive plays separated by mere seconds but spanning thousands of kilometers, including more than 500 kilometers between songs, roughly the distance from New York City to Pittsburgh. Also, plaintiff is informed and believes that in January 2022 and September 25, the volume and timing of the music streams for Drake's music failed to follow typical established streaming patterns, while most songs and or albums see an initial spike in streaming immediately upon release. Those same songs, albums typically follow a predictable decay pattern over the following months. However, in many instances, the streams of Drake's music on Spotify saw significant and irregular uptick months, and in some cases years, after the release of his song, with no reasonable explanations for those upticks other than streaming fraud. In other instances, Drake's decay rate was slower and less dramatic when compared to those of his contemporaries. Additionally, the number of streams of Drake's music to individual accounts is staggering and irregular. For instance, plaintiff is informed and believes that while the average Spotify listener listens to 10 songs per day, a massive amount of accounts listening to Drake or Drake's users listed exclusively to Drake's music for 23 hours a day. Plaintiff is informed and believes that the streaming data of Drake's music shows that less than 2% of his user accounts for roughly 15% of his overall streams, and roughly 9% of his streams are attributable to less than 1% of his users. As a result, Drake's music accumulated far higher total streams compared to other highly streamed artists, even though those artists had far more users than Drake. As a result of the fraudulent streaming scheme described above with respect to Drake's music, the right holders of Drake's music, Drake and his company, Frozen Moments LLC, which also is the company that he had used in a similar lawsuit as well, had saw their shares of revenue pools substantially and artificially increase. This generated significant revenue from Drake and Frozen Moments LLC, all at the expense of other right holders whose shares and revenues were greatly diminished. The amount of streaming revenue that would otherwise have been distributed to legitimate right holders, but for the fraudulent boosting of Drake's music, is estimated to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Spotify knew or should have known about the anomalies described above had Spotify employed reasonable detection measures. These artificial and inauthentic streams were readily identifiable to Spotify in light of their statistically improbable geohashing sudden surges of stream counts, coordinated streaming patterns, and uniquely slow and shallow decay of streaming of songs. But to date, Spotify has never properly addressed the millions, if not billions, of fraudulent and artificial music stream attributed to Drake's music, and the ill-gotten revenues from those streams have never been properly distributed among the legitimate right holders to whom the revenue is properly owed. Drake's music streams are but one notable example of a rapid streaming fraud that Spotify has allowed to occur across myriad artists through negligence and or willful blindness. At all times relevant to the allegations contained here in Spotify was one of the easiest platforms to defraud using bots due to negligent, lax, or non-existent bot-related security measures. For instance, Spotify offers free ad-supported version of its streaming service, which does not require a use of valid credit card to sign up. This creates the ideal condition for fraudulent bot accounts to create fake Spotify accounts, since bots do not possess valid credit cards and or not in the volume required for meaningful bot-supported streaming fraud. Through negligence or willful blindness, Spotify failed to maintain platform integrity and failed to prevent the use of artificial bot streaming to inflate the number of streams reported for various artists, including but not limited to Drake. Moreover, representing the right holders and others that Spotify employs active measures to detect, prevent, and remedy streaming fraud. And by not revealing the stark reality that streaming fraud continues to surge on its platform, Spotify conceals from, right holders both the enormity of this problem and its detrimental financial impact to legitimate right holders. And at this point, it's just lawsuit on top of lawsuit on top of lawsuit. Everybody's suing, man. And what's crazy, and the reason why I think that RBX is using Drake as a prime example is because Drake had did this upon himself when he started bringing up bots in the first place. He's the one that opened the door for this on himself. He's the one that opened the can of worms for people to start looking into him. Because like I said, if he was accusing Kendrick Lamar of using bots, it's only because he knows about bots. And how do you know about bots unless you're the one that's using them also? But we'll keep it alleged. But at this point in time, this case still has to grow. And like I said, man, lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. It's crazy how this is just going. But as of right now, we got to remember they're naming Drake as an example in this lawsuit. It's not just Drake that could be using bots. It's more people that could be using bots. This is a lawsuit that's between RBX and behalf of other members of the general public going against Spotify. Y'all could tell me how you feel about this and get back to me. Let me know how you feel about this case. Them using Drake as an example. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't pass the bar exam. So this is just me reading this, giving you my thoughts. Tell me how you feel. Let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video, man. Peace. Keep it alleged.